lingering scent of old perfume, recurring black stains on the bathroom fixtures, and an infestation of flies in the dead of winter.
When we first looked at the house, very first time, we noticed no flies anywhere in the house. Especially when you think back now, they were limited in particular to the sewing room second floor. Same bedroom that Father Ray had asked us not to use as a bedroom. The longer we were in the house, the more flies there were in that room. I don't have an explanation for how or why, but that's where they were.
As the days wear on, other strange discoveries fuel the Lutz's mounting sense of unease.
I was down in the basement one afternoon, and there was a particular shelving area that I really wanted to relocate, and it looked like a portable. So I moved it, and much to my surprise, there was a small room behind it, and it was painted a red.
We keep calling it a room, but we don't know what else to call it. It was a very small space. The fact that it was red and that it had an odor was the disturbing part. Then when Harry, our black lab, wouldn't go near the room, cowered away from it, that was more disturbing.
This red room was not in the original house plans. Who built it? Why was it hidden? Soon the Lutz's puzzlement turns to abject terror. Night after night, George is snapped awake at 3:15 a.m., the established time of the murders, while Kathy is plagued by nightmares in which she relives the horror of the DeFeo tragedy.
There was one that was very vivid in where I experienced where the bullets went in and out of Mrs. DeFeo's body. And I was able to determine who died in what order. And later on, when we met with William Weber, who was the attorney for Ronald DeFeo, and he confirmed what the police had found. And they had never published where the bullets went in and out of the body.
George becomes disturbed at the way his wife and children begin sleeping in their beds, the same position as the murdered DeFeos.
I would not sleep on my stomach, everyone else did. None of us ever slept on our stomachs before moving in the house. We later came to believe that's the position the bodies were in.
Slowly but inexorably, the influence spreads to the children, in particular, 5-year-old Missy, who boasts about her new imaginary playmate, Jody.
I recall one morning I was in the kitchen, and Melissa came in, and she said to me, "Mommy, do angels talk?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." "Why?" And she said, "Well, I think I have an angel in my room."
Missy described it as a pig that had the ability to be very big or very small, invisible or visible. But Missy would say things about it that it said that you knew she couldn't make up on her own. One of the most uncomfortable statements that Jody made was, "You will always live here." That's not something that makes you comfortable to hear your child's invisible friend is saying that.
George and Kathy dismiss the stories of their daughter's invisible friend until Jody makes its presence known to them.
I saw eyes looking down at me from Missy's bedroom window when I would be coming back from the boathouse at night. I would run into the house, run upstairs, and there'd be nothing there. There would be times that Missy would be sitting on her bed talking, and you'd walk past, you'd see the rocking chair moving, but Missy was on the bed. There were a couple of times that we saw eyes from the outside looking into the house. There were tracks in the snow that were made by something with a cloven hoof.
During the first 2 weeks of January 1976, a series of terrifying and mind-numbing events finally convinced the Lutzes that some evil force is residing in their house.
How do you explain an odor that all of a sudden appears, or a cold spot in a room that you walk through, the cold is not there anymore? Or the front door slamming, and you go running down and the door's still locked, but you heard it happen.
Desperate to rid their home of the diabolical presence, the Lutzes are advised by a friend to first open all of the windows throughout the house and then go from room to room reciting the Lord's Prayer.
Sounded like a solution to us. We did the same thing. When we did that, we heard a chorus of voices say to us, "Will you stop?" I believe that's one of the things that we did that caused the presence there to become less than happy with us.
Not until sunrise does the family dare fall asleep, unaware that their battle with the supernatural has just begun. After failing to cast the evil presence out of the house on Ocean Avenue, the Lutzes attempt to seek help from Father Ray, the Catholic priest who first came to bless the house, but find their efforts to reach him thwarted by some unknown force.
Hello, I can't hear you.
Anytime I would attempt that call, that contact, we would run into interference on the phone. There were times when Father Ray would attempt to call us, and the connection again would be broken up with static.
After we left the house, Father Ray told the story of sitting in the chancellor's office and just discussing the possibility of helping us in some way, and hearing the heat come up in the pipes and the radiators, and the incredible chill, cold that came into the room. And he said all we were doing was discussing it, and this started happening.
After again attempting to bless the house on their own, the Lutzes experience a night of horror they say they will never forget. The last night they would ever spend in the house. Never do the Lutzes discuss the specific events of that night. The memory, they say, is still too disturbing.
We left to the house because the house became uninhabitable. As far as we were concerned, there was no reason to stay there anymore. There were too many things happening too often and confronting us constantly. Those specific events are not something that we try to sit down and explain to anyone else. That's why the book was done, so that that's not something that we have to go through anymore.
To describe fear and the depth of what fear can do within you is hard to verbalize. To describe evil, which has no boundary, is hard to present. But this is what the family was experiencing that night. Each one with the degree that they could handle. This sense for our very lives was there, and we chose to go.
On January 14, 1976, 28 days after moving in, the Lutzes flee 112 Ocean Avenue, abandoning the house and everything they own. Despite the certainty of a huge financial loss, George and Kathy decide to return the house to the bank and sell all of their personal belongings at auction.
We couldn't eradicate that which was there and didn't want to be responsible for passing it on.
We bought the house for $80,000. It had a mortgage of $60,000. We had put another $4,000 or so down at the closing. When the auctioneer took care of the contents of the house, I think we netted $1,600, something like that, from the sale. We moved to California and we started over.
One of the instructions we received was that there was one item that we could take out, but anything else would not have been healthy for us. The one item that we had was a large cedar box that had been built by George's grandfather. And inside of that were some of the children's baby pictures. That's about the only item we came out with.
Although the Lutzes may have escaped Amityville, they cannot escape the onslaught of publicity that follows them to California.
When we left the house, we sat down and did a series of tapes for self-help. And we just talked about everything we could possibly remember that took place in the house. And that eventually became the Amityville Horror, the book. The movie, on the other hand, was a work of Hollywood.
In the midst of all the media hype surrounding their story, the Lutzes claim the evil forces continued to haunt them for many years, until help came from the exorcist for the Archbishop of Canterbury.
He performed a rite in his church that helped us for the rest of our lives. There came a point when we said we have to stop blaming things that aren't right or going right in our lives on the house. But as time went on, it was like a half-life. It just slowly went away until today it really doesn't exist.
George and Kathy, who are now divorced, maintain that their experiences in Amityville have had the most lasting impact on their personal lives.
This story of our lives through Amityville is not the story of one person going through. It's the story of a family, 5 members, each one coming with what affected them and bringing it in. I think what we lost there was the people that we had been prior to moving in. The children in particular, their life was so dramatically touched by what they experienced there. So you could retrieve some things, but you couldn't retrieve that portion of your life prior to.
But what of the supernatural forces that drove the family out of 112 Ocean Avenue? What exactly were they? And why did they seem to only affect the Lutzes?
When we moved into the house, we were practicing transcendental meditation. I think in the practice of that, it opened up the mind and the spirit to other things and brought about a sharpened sensitivity. And I think we opened ourselves up to it.
I think that whatever was there was very intelligent, very impatient. I think its abilities are far more powerful than we really understand. I think you know evil from experiencing it.
I would say it was demonic. It took a dream and it shattered it. It took innocence and it destroyed it. And it was out for life itself.
No one has reported any paranormal occurrences since the Lutzes fled from the house in January 1976. The home now has a different address and a new look, but it still attracts curious visitors from around the world. As for the killer who once lived there, Ronald DeFeo applied for parole in 1999. In his hearing, he told officials that he was downstairs, quote, using drugs, unquote, while the real killers came in and gunned down his family. DeFeo's request for parole was denied. Discover more about this and every History's Mysteries topic at historychannel.com. I'm Arthur Kent for the History Channel. Thanks for watching.
the horror of the DeFeo tragedy.
There was one that was very vivid in where I experienced where the bullets went in and out of Mrs. DeFeo's body. And I was able to determine who died in what order. And later on, when we met with William Weber, who was the attorney for Ronald DeFeo.
Cowered away from it. That was more disturbing.
This red room was not in the original house plans. Who built it? Why was it hidden? Soon the Lutz's puzzlement turns to abject terror. Night after night, George is snapped awake at 3:15 a.m., the established time of the murders. While Kathy is plagued by nightmares in which she reliving scent of old perfume, recurring black stains on the bathroom fixtures, and an infestation of flies in the dead of winter.
When we first looked at the house, very first time, we noticed no flies anywhere in the house. Especially when you think back now, they were limited, in particular to the sewing room second floor. Same bedroom that Father Ray had asked us not to use as a bedroom. The longer we were in the house, the more flies there were in that room. I don't have an explanation for how or why, but that's where they were.
As the days wear on, other strange discoveries fuel the Lutz's mounting sense of unease.
I was down in the basement one afternoon, and there was a particular shelving area that I really wanted to relocate, and it looked like a portable. So I moved it, and much to my surprise, there was a small room behind it, and it was painted a red.
We keep calling it a room, but we don't know what else to call it. It's a very small space. The fact that it was red and that it had an odor was the disturbing part. Then when Harry, our black lab, wouldn't go near the room,